28 days, 6 hours, 42 minutes, 12 seconds. No, it's not the average recording time of one of our top 10 shows. It's how long until the world will end, or will it? Hello there, and welcome to another episode of the Silver Screen Podcast's younger, sinister, malformed brother, the one they keep locked in the basement away from the normals. That's right, it's time for another cult classic, and if you haven't guessed from the tagline at the start, today we'll be looking at Richard Kelly's 2001 movie, Donnie Darko. Andy Kay, and with me today is my ever-present guy in a bunny suit, which, in fairness, is one of his least strange kinks. That's Mike Wilson. How are you doing, Mike?
Oh, my word.
You can go suck a fuck.
That was my response to that. So, yeah, we're already starting because we need to go on with the cursing, I guess. But yeah, no, I'm good. I've actually really enjoyed watching and diving deep into Donnie Darko, which wasn't my choice, but yeah, I'm looking forward to talking about it. It's a film we could spend plenty of hours discussing, I'm sure, but we'll see how we get on.
Nice one. Well, also joining us today, that's right, folks, after recently appearing in the Turner episode, he's back to talk more time travel. Anyone would think he's a Doctor Who fan or something, it's Will Templar.
Hello. Thank you for having me again.
You're more than welcome, fella. And last but certainly not least, you heard him in the channel's recent top 10 Bond movie selection, and I've got to thank him for being the only other member of the team who had nice things to say about Moonraker. It's Jamie. How are you doing, fella?
I'm doing good. I just can't wait to talk about one of my personal favourite movies.
Oh, fantastic. Now, before we go any further, Will and Jamie, I'm going to put you on the spot, as despite being no stranger to the Silver Screen podcast, it's the first time you've been in a cult episode. Regular listeners will know that Mike gave his top pick on our recent Evil Dead show. But for the two of you today, I have to ask, if you could only choose one, what would be your own personal all-time favourite cult movie? And I'm going to go to you first, Will.
Okay, so I've recently watched it. I don't know if this will count, but it's the Harrison Ford Blade Runner.
Okay.
Yeah. I consider that. Yeah, we're completely
I
flopped on
haven't
it.
watched like the newer one, but you can be the classics.
Yeah, agreed. What about you, Jamie?
We'll have to cover that one day, by the way, Blade Runner. Sorry,
I hope so.
Yeah. Sorry, go ahead, Jamie.
Well, my answer is quite boring, as my favourite cult movie is a certain movie called Donnie Darko.
I knew you were going to say that.
Well,
This should be a good episode, then.
So yeah, sorry for the boring answer.
No, not at all. It's. I think it's held up better than my own, and well, we'll get to Mike's in a few episodes. I think. Isn't that right, Mike?
DK, I love you, but we only have 14 hours to save the Earth.
Wilson's alive.
We'll get there. If I'm still alive at that point.
Yeah. Now, on to today's movie. Now, development on Donnie Darko began in 1997 when Richard Kelly, director of the movie, graduated from film school with an idea he had regarding a jet engine falling into a house with no one knowing its origin, and built the story around it. Kelly was so protective of the project that he insisted on directing the movie himself, but being relatively inexperienced, he struggled to secure backing until Drew Barrymore's Flower Films agreed to produce. Set in October 1988, the film follows the titular Donnie, an emotionally troubled teenager who begins to have visions after a bizarre accident in which he sees a strange figure in a bunny costume who tells him that the world will end in just over 28 days. Now, the movie premiered on January 19th, 2001 at the Sundance Film Festival, followed by a limited theatrical release in October of that year. Due to scenes featuring the crashing of a plane so soon after September 11th attacks, advertising on the movie was extremely limited, which led to a severely depleted box office during the initial run. Despite this, the movie did receive critical acclaim, receiving positive reviews, and was listed as at the number 2 spot of Empire's 50 greatest independent films of all time. Because of such attention, the film was reissued and went on to gross $7.5 million worldwide, with a further $10 million in home video sales in the US alone. Since then, it's received a director's cut reissue, which was released in 2004, as well as a stage production, and the sure sign of a cult hit, a lackluster sequel that nobody asked for.
I will watch that one day.
Yeah, maybe. I'm not sure. And for those that haven't seen it, and if you haven't, what the hell are you doing here? The original is currently available on physical media and DVD, Blu-ray, and 4K format from Arrow Films. Though I understand the Blu-ray 4K release is now going for quite the price. It's also available on streaming services. Now, as usual, we'll take a deep dive into the movie in just a moment, but as you lucky people have come to know and love over the months, before we do, we're going to take a little peek behind the curtain and enthrall you with wisdom / bore you with trivia as we once again go behind the scenes. So, Mike, if you would kindly hit me with your rhythm stick.
Yes, I will. So just a fair bit of information that I thought was interesting. I tried not to put too much in here, but I was intrigued by learning that both writing and filming the film took 28 days, which is weirdly the same length of time portrayed in the movie. Kelly wrote the movie in October of 1998, and that being the time of year is what influenced him to set the movie around Halloween. He claims that he set out to write something, quote, ambitious, personal, and nostalgic about the 1980s, which pushed the envelope by combining science fiction with a coming-of-age tale. The New York Times honed in on the 80s coming-of-age story aspect and observed the influence of John Hughes, noting the ineffectual adults and the fact that Donnie's, quote, suffering is a way to make him more sensitive, unquote. Kelly summarized that the script was to be, in his words, an amusing and poignant recollection of suburban America in the Reagan era. As you were kind of alluding to earlier, Kelly had recalled a news story that he'd read as a child, which he's later called an urban legend, about a large piece of ice falling from the wing of a plane and crashing through a boy's bedroom. He was not there at the time and thus escaped death. Kelly used this to develop an initial idea of a jet engine falling onto a house where no one could determine its origin, and he built the rest of the script from there. At one point, Kelly did consider replacing the jet engine with a piece of ice like he'd read. Either way, he was adamant he was going to set the film in 1988, thinking it would be fresh to explore the era and depict a society that he'd not seen in a film before. Later, he did admit that he felt pressured to make the setting more contemporary, but he couldn't figure out how to make the story work in that setting and retained the original period. He says he got ideas for Donnie's experience of paranoid schizophrenia from researching the topic online, and says he considered that such a broad disorder that is difficult to define was a great way to ground a supernatural story in a scientific sense. There are some autobiographical links with Kelly in the film. He said there is, quote, plenty of me in Donnie's character. Kelly grew up in Midlothian, Virginia, also a suburban town where a local woman named Grandma Death would stand by the road and constantly open and close her mailbox. Kelly also incorporated the moment he almost ran over a homeless person while driving, arguments with his school teachers over the curriculum, and his personal experiences with sleepwalking into the narrative. Now, Kelly had Frank as a rabbit from the beginning, but he was unsure whether the character originated from a dream or his longtime interest in the animal novel Watership Down by Richard Adams. The novel was to be taught in Karen's English class after the school had censored Graham Greene, but it was a subplot that was abandoned in the theatrical version, yet included in the director's cut. And I was just telling DK off air before recording that I do think it's one of those scenes that should probably have been included because I think it's quite important, but as I say, it's only there if you watch the director's cut. Kelly had meetings with various Hollywood big shots, but in particular, he had an influential meeting with Francis Ford Coppola, who drew his attention to one of Karen's lines after she is fired. The line, the kids have to figure it all out these days because the parents, they don't have a clue. And Kelly recalled he slid the binder down the big table and very dramatically said, that's what your whole movie's about right there. Now, Vince Vaughn was offered the role of Donnie, but he turned it down as he felt he was too old for the part. Mark Wahlberg was also approached, but he insisted that he should play Donnie with a lisp, so we all dodged that bullet. The film progressed in the year 2000 when actor Jason Schwartzman had read the script and agreed to play Donnie. Kelly said that moment legitimized him as a director, which led to Barrymore accepting the part as Karen, and as DK mentioned, her production company Flower Films with Nancy Javonen agreed to finance the movie to the sum of $4.5 million, which Kelly has later said was the bare minimum he would have needed to make the film. Eventually, Jason Schwartzman was forced to drop out due to scheduling conflicts, and Jake Gyllenhaal was cast. He was given a lot of room to incorporate his own ideas, apparently, including making his voice sound like, and I quote, a child talking to its blanket when he talks to Frank, as he is a source of comfort for Donnie. Gyllenhaal also had the idea to have his real-life sister Maggie star as Elizabeth Darko, and Jolene Purdy's audition for Charita was the first of her career. She has gone on to much bigger things now. If anybody's curious, you can IMDb that name. Richard Kelly credits Javonen, that's Drew Barrymore's partner, for being instrumental for getting Noah Wyle and Patrick Swayze on board. Nearly there, just a couple more facts. Kelly recalled several people showing him drawings of what they thought Frank should look like, describing them like an Easter bunny. He wanted Frank to be disturbing and animalistic. He insisted that Frank's face had to disturb people and create an intense response within the audience. The costume was first presented to the cast and crew at Loyola High School, where filming for the high school was taking place, shortly after filming began. Although the actor Duval wore the suit for almost every scene, a director stepped in for the initial shoot, and Kelly recalled, "Everyone just got quiet. Like, this is really intense. So I knew it was working, and I felt the sense of relief." And finally, in 2021, Kelly announced that work on an actual full sequel is in progress, something he had abandoned until he spoke with James Cameron, who apparently has convinced him to make it because it was crazy and has all kinds of broad ideas. And we shall see if it transpires, but in either case, it will presumably be not S. Darko, shall we say. So at least it has that going for it. And yeah, I completely forgot to play any music over that, but either way, that'll take us out of the behind the scenes section.
I've got one more
Will,
behind the scenes fact,
go for it.
I don't think you mentioned. One person who helped get the movie out there in terms of after its initial failure in the box office, one certain director helped to get the movie more out there as he saw potential in it, and that director was Christopher Nolan.
With regards to film, I remember we rented it from a local Blockbuster, Ask Your Parents' Kids, a few months after it was released. We'd not heard anything about it, and really I was just intrigued by the cover imagery, and, well, rest is history. What about you guys? What was your first experience with this one?
I am probably the oldest, other than DK, no offense here. So I was actually in my first year of university when the movie came out, studying English and film studies. So the film was kind of, it was sort of the whispered about, and people were handing out little mini posters and flyers. And I was saying to DK, I went to go and see it at the Tyneside Cinema, which is the local cinema that shows like indie movies and cult films and foreign movies, which probably wouldn't necessarily make it to the big multiplexes. So I did go and see it at the cinema and didn't really think much about it, except that I kind of thought I had enjoyed the experience. So I did buy it when it came out on DVD as well. And as again, I was telling DK, the current person that has that DVD is my friend Stephen Brown, who you'll have heard on a couple of the podcast episodes on both channels. I lent him the DVD probably about 20 years ago and just have never gotten it back. So yeah, I've now been watching the Arrow Blu-ray, which I bought when DK suggested we cover this movie, since I'm never going to get the DVD back anyway. So that's my experience with Donnie Darko.
Right, so my experience with it is I saw it, was it 2 years ago? 2021, that's 2 years ago. And basically, I usually watch films with my family, and the reason I do that is because my family they always pick random films which I've never heard of before for me to watch. And one day they suggested watching Donnie Darko. I hadn't heard of it before, so we just put it on. I didn't really know much about it. I looked it up and just like, damn, this looks creepy, but whatever, we'll watch it. And I loved it. And a few months later, I got the Blu-ray just because I usually get, I don't get that much physical media, but if it's a favorite movie of mine, I'll get a DVD or Blu-ray of it.
I do not have that interest in the story. I literally just watched it on Amazon Prime yesterday, but in fairness, I did thoroughly enjoy it, so it's not going to be like a dampener today.
Oh, well, that's all right. Do you guys think it's held up over the last 20 plus years?
Yeah,
God,
I'd say
yeah.
so.
Yeah,
it's a weird one for me, because again, I'm sure I was mentioning this to you at some point, but I know I'd seen it before, but I haven't seen it in at least 20 years since the DVD was unceremoniously stolen from me. So I remembered watching it, and I remembered as I was watching it again this time, there were lines and moments where I was like, I vividly remember that. And weird things like I remember the promotional campaign for it was revolving around the line in the cinema where Frank says, pay close attention to the movie screen. I want to show you something. That was like the opening line of all the trailers and stuff that we got that was, burned into my brain. And then obviously the funnier lines and stuff that have become iconic. But and I knew the broad strokes of the plot. Like I knew the whole thing about, spoiler alert, the jet engine and Donnie ultimately dying and the time travel plot and stuff. But it was one of those things, because it had been so long, that it was almost like watching it for the first time again, because so much of it was just like, have no recollection of these particular scenes, and it was a joy to watch again, and kind of feel a bit gutted that I hadn't done it sooner. But now I'm glad to have dived back into it.
Nice one. See, I'm contributing to your education. To me, it's quite strange to see such a young-looking Jake and Maggie Gyllenhaal.
Because my introduction to Jake Gyllenhaal as an actor was, because I'm a young'un, it was Spider-Man Far From Home. Yeah, Spider-Man Far From Home.
Yeah.
Well, actually, it was Spider-Man Far From Home, and like I don't remember what it was. It's probably like perfume or something, but it was like an advert on TV where it was like Gyllenhaal on a boat in the middle of the Arctic or something. I don't remember what it was advertising, but I remember seeing that.
You've got to watch Prisoners.
I will watch more Jake Gyllenhaal. I do remember you recommending Prisoners.
The Guilty, yeah, he's a sublime actor. This is probably one of his best performances as well, without a doubt.
Yeah, definitely, 100%.
Yeah. I mean, seeing as we're on it, we might as well just go straight into the acting. Standout performances. Have you got any? I want to start with you, Jamie.
Well, Jake Gyllenhaal, obviously, delivering one of his best roles from just anything really, because he just has. I don't know how to describe it. He's got the innocence. I feel like, even though he's not like an innocent character, he's sympathetic. You do feel bad for him because of the his condition and how he feels kind of ostracized by everyone else. So I think he's got the layers to him that his character needs. Just gonna quickly look up some of the other actors. I remember the character names, but not always the actors. So
I've got one. It's the therapist. I think her name's Catherine Ross.
Yeah.
She was sublime, and like it's such a delicate topic, mental health. So I think she got the kind of empathy spot on. So her and Jake, were probably my standout performances. Because Jake is like, you don't even have to ask why. He's just sublime. And how old was he in this film? He's got to be like 20s, right?
23, I think he was.
23. For him to lead a film like this is sublime, yeah.
Oh no, I think he was 9. I think he might have been 19. I think it were Maggie that were 23.
He was born in 1980, so he was around 20 to 21.
Yeah, but the fun fact at the start, or whatever you call it, the behind the scenes stuff, I didn't actually know that was like a actor's choice for the voice. But yeah, that was really effective, and that's pretty impressive.
I'd say another actor which stood out to me was Jenna Malone as Gretchen. Again, it's just the you feel the sympathy because she's got the layers to her with the performance. Near the end when she thinks that her mother's been taken by her crazy father. You do feel sorry for her because she does have the emotional range to her, but at the same time, her and Jake Gyllenhaal have great chemistry, and you do really buy the connection between the two.
Definitely. I also think Noah Weil and Drew Barrymore are really good in this, if a little understated. They don't try and steal the limelight.
Yeah, but I mean, it's not their story, so I'm glad they don't try to steal the limelight.
I will interject here and say that I actually thought Drew Barrymore was really good in a somewhat limited role. But again, I think she's one of the people that benefits if you watch the director's cut, because she has a couple of really important scenes that they add that are actually really well acted as well. But yeah, I mean, in particular, as I was watching even the theatrical cut, I think her scene where she gets fired and she's basically railing about, losing these kids to apathy and everything. I thought that was a really good scene. And like Francis Ford Coppola, apparently, I do think it's pretty key to the movie.
Honestly, I love everyone. It's hard to pick standouts. I think everyone did a great job.
Yeah, there's nobody that lets it down. I know that Mike's got a personal affection for Beth Grant.
I was just going to say... Yep, I was already talking to you about it, but yes, character actress Beth Grant, who is stalking me because she's also in Speed, which I watched for the first time ever last week. And I heard her on a podcast. She was in an episode of The Office, so she was on a podcast for that I was listening to. And what else? Oh, yeah, and then I discovered she's actually the mother of a popular Star Trek actress, which blew my mind a little bit. So, to be fair, though, I think for the role that she has, she is really outstanding because she has to be unlikable. If you're not sure who she is, by the way, she's Kitty, the gym teacher who kind of supports the self-help guru who turns out to be
the second most horrible character in the movie.
Yeah, but it's not easy to play those kind of roles, and yet she acts it so well. And even within that, like there's moments that I was telling DK that I like a lot of the dark humor in the movie, but selling the line, sometimes I doubt your commitment to sparkle motion, and making it one of the funniest lines in the movie, it's just like, come on, that can't be easy.
I always forget how funny this movie is, and then every rewatch I'm laughing out loud at multiple points.
Yeah, it's dark humor, but it's definitely there. I was saying to DK, there's also the bit where they're gonna kiss, and then Gretchen's like, "No, I want it to be," and he finishes a sentence with, "Oh, somewhere beautiful and reminding you what life is," and then she's like, "Yeah, plus there's also a fat guy over there staring at us." It's brilliant.
I think, like most people, the standout comedic moment for me is the bit where they're discussing the Smurfs lore. It just breaks me every time.
that's my favorite bit.
I don't know, man. I still get quite a chuckle out of what are feces, baby mice. Oh. or alternatively, do you even know who Graham Greene is? I think we've all seen Bonanza.
I always like the bit where what was his name? Eddie, where they're in the office, and where they find out that Donnie told Kitty to shove the chart up her anus, and then and he just he couldn't help it.
Yeah, apparently Kelly had to leave the set when they were filming that because he couldn't stop laughing.
I don't blame him.
Again, though, Beth Grant with the comedy chops of like, you're out of nowhere, it's this dead serious scene, and she's like, "He told me to forcibly insert the task card up my anus," and you just can't not laugh at that, man.
I do love a bit of dark comedy, and this movie delivers. I think that's why I like the movie so much. It's like, yeah, it's got the serious moments, but it's entertaining. It's an entertaining watch.
Yeah,
I think that's.
In a more literal sense, I found the fact that only 2 people went to a film screening on Halloween was like completely unrealistic.
It was the Evil Dead, to be fair, which is, I think it was
and it was paired with Last Temptation of Christ.
Yes, quite deliberately homing in on that, just as Donnie is tempted by Frank to go and burn down the house. Yes, I noticed the symbolism.
But it's like, yeah, like you're telling me only 2 people went to a screening of Evil Dead.
Well, it would have been like a super X-rated. So, like, who else would have done?
Talking about Cunningham, what did everybody think to Patrick Swayze in there?
Oh yeah, I think he great role, and he did a great performance. And Jim Cunningham, I think, was an interesting character. The guy most people, specifically Kitty, romanticizes and fantasizes over, and it's like, oh, he's actually a horrible, horrible man. I just think that's interesting thing, and also it makes Kitty more unlikable. It's like, the fact that of course she would say that it is like, oh, these allegations aren't true. It's like, yeah, of course that is absolutely in character for her.
And it's also like conservative era America as well, so naturally that's the kind of thing. Like, she's banned books and whatever because they're teaching pornography apparently in the school, yet she supports this pedophile because all conservatives are hypocrites.
Yeah, I also found it kind of ironic that she was supporting a pedalo, and when she was saying that to Roge, she had on a shirt like, what was it, like, "I love God" or something.
God is awesome.
God is awesome. Yeah.
I want to just echo exactly what Jamie's already said, though, that Jenna Malone was fantastic in the movie, and the relationship was truly believable. Like, genuinely, that kind of first love, you're just coming of age type thing. I was totally invested in.
What about Mary McConnell, Holmes Osborne as Darko's parents? How were they for everybody?
Oh, I loved them. I thought they were good. As I said, Eddie cracks me up at many points. He's an absolute legend. But Rose, she's like, I like how just motherly she is. I know that sounds a bit cheesy, but she is motherly. Like, she's obviously her and Donnie, they have like a stable relationship, but it's not like perfect or anything. They do butt heads occasionally, but it's not like, I wouldn't call it toxic. Like, she cares for Donnie. She, in spite of everything, she does care for Donnie. I just think that's nice to see. For someone with mental health problems, like having parents who do care for them, I just think it makes the viewing experience pleasant. That you can he's got people who do care for him. Like, even if there are some people at school who don't like him, he's got a nice family.
Yeah, that scene where he says, "What's it like to have a mental case as a son?" And I think that's wonderful.
Yeah,
I love that scene. I was going to say the same thing. And Jamie, you're saying you hadn't seen the director's cut, haven't you?
No, every time I think about doing it, I decide maybe later. It's just, well, one, I know it's a lot longer, so I don't always have
Well,
the time.
How much?
Two,
longer?
I kind of I love the film as is, and I've heard like mixed things about the director's cut. Like some people say it's better, some people say it's a bit too
It's not-
waffly, and
it's not better, I'll give you that. But like I said, there's some really cool. I mean, alternatively, as I was saying to DK, maybe just watch the deleted scenes that are on the theatrical cut Blu-ray, because there are scenes that are put back in the director's cut that I really love, that I'm glad are there. And yet there's also kind of a lot of hand-holdy, this is the philosophy of time travel that we're explaining.
Yeah, I
that
kind of
do
like
that.
not knowing everything about, like, it's the journey more than the destination for this film, for me at least. Like I like the mystery. I like figuring everything out for myself. So I will watch the director's cut one day, probably October time to
Fair enough. I was saying to DK, it's kind of weird because I don't mind the kind of stuff like that existing, but I would have preferred that Kelly had just done a copy of the philosophy of time travel as a book separately, keep it out of the film. And then if you want to go and look that up and know all about it, you can just buy the book if you want to. And if you don't, then the film's not affected,
I mean,
But,
Kelly's on record himself as saying he doesn't really consider it a director's cut. It was the publisher's Newmarket Films idea. He considers the theatrical version just fine. Although he edited it, he says, to him, the new version's just a kind of special edition of sorts.
Yeah, I mean, I would say the director's cut, having now watched it, isn't bad, but it's certainly not as good as the theatrical cut because of the, like everybody's already said, it's because it takes away some of the kind of mystery and some of that thing. But then again, like I said, a lot of the scenes that are in it are worth watching it for. Including little touches like directing moments and flashes that I won't go into. But the reason that I brought it up specifically to latch onto your conversation, DK, was because there's a really cool moment that's not in the theatrical cut between Donnie and his dad, which is a similar kind of counterpoint to the moment with him and his mum, where his dad's basically like, Donnie's apologizing, saying, "Oh, you must be sick. I'm crazy and I'm sick of this." And his dad's like, "You're not crazy. You're just more intelligent than most people in the world." And they're all just subscribing to this same old bullshit narrative that everybody feeds them, and you scare them because you won't do that. And to people like that, I just say, what do we say? Fuck you. And I was like, that's a really sweet, nice moment between him and his dad that I kind of wish was in the film. But yeah, it's there if you want to watch it on the deleted scenes or the director's cut anyway.
Whereabouts will you find it? Is it literally just Blu-ray?
Yeah, on the theatrical cut Blu-ray, it's under deleted scenes, and otherwise it's a second disc on the one that me and Jamie have got for the director's cut.
Right, okay.
To answer your question, by the way, Will, it's 20 minutes longer. It's not hugely that much.
Okay. I was expecting like an hour longer, by the way.
No.
No.
Yeah, it's like I mean, it's like things of the director's cut. It's like I think the film like has a pretty tight pace overall. Like you're quite breezy, and it's like I feel like adding on to it would sort of drag it out a little bit. So I'm kind of glad it was trimmed down enough.
There was enough weirdness.
It kind of does, but at the same time, like I said, I think the thing that affects it the worst is the fact that it just stops and intersperses these pages on screen from the time travel book. And it's just like, it stops the movie dead whenever that happens, because you feel like you've got to stop and read it. And it's like, why are you explaining what's... I'd rather you just didn't,
Movie. I'm not going to read. If I wanted to read, I'd read the book.
Yeah. Exactly, yeah.
Speaking of that, does anybody have any comments on the writing of the movie itself?
Very, very sharp overall, I think. Like, not just with the dialogue and stuff, where it's very, very quick and with the characters bouncing off each other and some zinger of lines. I just think it is just a compelling narrative overall, and the stuff included in the script about the philosophy of time travel is just intriguing, and I feel like also the way some scenes have like limited dialogue, but it's effective. Like specifically the scenes with Frank, it's kind of like in the first scenes with Frank, he doesn't really say very much, but just the dialogue is effective from what he does say. He doesn't need to drag it out. He just says 28 days, 6 hours, 42 minutes, 12 seconds. That's when the world is end. That's all he needs to say.
Yeah, I can do whatever I want, and so can you. It's a pretty cool moment as well.
Similarly, a rare comparison, I found like the beats of that was very similar to Good Will Hunting, because it's a very similar film in terms of like mental illness and whatever. And I think the pace of this film was pretty similar to that one. It was really quick, and there was never really a point where you kind of took your eyes off the performances because they were so. Well, this is a rhyme section, but it was like writing and the acting complemented each other. So yeah, the pace was fantastic. I was there.
Definitely, yeah. If we're making comparisons, by the way, DK, you'll appreciate this. As I was watching it this time around with kind of a more refined palette, I was very aware that this reminded me a lot of Twin Peaks in moments, from some of the weirdness and the kind of suburban feel and stuff. I'm talking, by the way, good Twin Peaks, not Twin Peaks: The Return. But but yeah, I can entirely see why you would like it, because it has that same sense of weirdness, ambiguity at times, and yet like that kind of something sinister and suburgatory kind of feel, if that makes sense. And and yet it kind of finds beauty in some of the darker moments, I think, as well, which Lynch is good at doing. So yeah, I figured that was probably why you were drawn to the movie.
Yeah. I mean, when you look at it on the surface level, also it is quite a sad indictment of the US education system, where Noah Wild Monitoff can't continue that conversation. When he
never understood that, to be honest.
Yeah, talking about God, because you're not allowed to get into that kind of thing because
I think it was the religious stuff.
Yeah. I mean, the teachers in the movie, for the most part, they feel helpless. They can see what's happening, but they can't prevent it. For the most part, parents don't care, and the teachers that do, their attempts to educate children are washed away in like this deluge of unimportant and flashy, easy fixes like Jim Cunningham or the talent contest, which seem more inclined to make the parents feel good about themselves than actually giving a shit about the kids.
I would push back against that a little. I don't think it portrays the parents as uncaring at all. I think they really, in particular, I'm thinking of the Darko parents, are actually, they seem like they are struggling with this as well, and they want to help and just find their own way to do it, and they take their licks. I mean, getting called a bitch and stuff.
You get the other one that's fallen for Jim Cunningham's bullshit about giving in to fear.
Yeah, but that's not really a main character as such. It's more like emphasizing what Donnie says, which is, I think you're the flippant antichrist, basically. So, yeah.
That's putting it mildly. 007.
Yeah, which I mean, I that's got nothing to do with some of the broader themes, but I can kind of sense that it's just Richard Kelly having a go at self-help gurus in general, and life is more complex than this. I love that scene where she's trying to make Donnie do the experiment, and he's like, "How about the entire spectrum of fucking human emotions? You can't put it all in one of two things."
Explain how many times I've wanted to do what Donnie did in that scene, but I'm too much of a wuss because I don't want to get in trouble and whatnot. I'm a goody two shoes, but I've wanted to do that so many times because some of the stuff you have to do in some of the stuff you taught in school in PSHE is just stupid.
Yeah, but I think that it hits a lot of those moments in terms of the writing that are key to coming of age and growing up and realizing things. And that's one of the key moments is there's a whole spectrum of emotions and experiences that people go through. And, in a way, the film asks you to speculate that death is part of that. You know what I mean? It's something we all have to come to terms with. And it's up to us, to not necessarily see it as a terrible thing. And yeah, I mean, that's what I took from it anyway. It was it comes back to him discussing in the start of the class, destruction is a form of creation, because in destruction you can change things. And I'm like, that's kind of literally what he's doing. He's destroying himself to save somebody else's life. And yeah, it's a weird act of love. And again, that coupling that with the lines in the therapist's office when she says, if the world, if the sky opens up and there's nothing else, all that matters would be what you remember, what you've done, and what kind of a person you were. And for me, that's why he laughs kind of hysterically and he's happy and loves it, because it's well, I've been a great person and I've done this selfless thing, and now death, I have no fear of it. So
yeah,
anyway, not to get deep.
His action of getting killed, at the end, it's how many people does it say? Well, it saves Gretchen's life for a start, because that she's not up at the grandma Death's house, sorry, to get hit by the car. Basically, the only really problem with Donnie Darko dying is Jim Cunningham wasn't exposed, but at the same time, with the the Mad World sequence, it showed him sort of like breaking down in tears. So maybe he would have confessed himself, or we know.
Yeah.
These are all things that are kind of explained very handholdy in the director's cut. But yeah, I mean, effectively, on the surface level, it seems like he saves Gretchen's life mainly and Frank's. But the kind of the time travel book postulates that he actually was saving the entire like main universe, because we were in a weird different universe until he sent the jet engine back and got himself killed. And so he was like the crux that was like, again, it comes back to, oh, the name sounds like a superhero. How do you know I'm not? Because it's like he literally saved creation. But then it also says that, you know, the people that were in this tangent universe won't remember, but they will sort of vaguely remember it in dreams, and they'll feel the sort of the weight. And that's what that last scene is about, because you've got Cunningham waking, you know,
his eye.
Frank in particular, like haunted by the pictures of the bunny suit and touching his eye, where he kind of feels what might have happened. And
it's just,
But I mean, it goes through every character. I mean, you see Noah Wiley's, you know, teacher wake up. You see the therapist wake up in a fright, and you see Charita, I think that's the name, wake up, and it's like the implication is that nobody really exactly remembers, but they all feel a sense of something, and maybe a sort of sadness and you know, a weird pseudo recognition of what's happened. And again, that's emphasized the most in Gretchen and Rose seemingly recognizing each other when they wave at each other, like, I know you from somewhere, but I can't place it, kind of thing. So yeah, sorry, I've spoken too much. I didn't want to take over. So yeah,
no,
We've lost Will again.
Should we talk about the endings, because we've kind of been on the subject of it?
Yeah, go for it.
Well, but we were talking about performances earlier. I've got to say, I've neglected to mention it, but Mary McDonnell at the very end, you know, the bit where she's smoking. I'm gonna be honest, that's my favorite bit of acting from the whole movie. Just like, you know, she's not bringing out. It's quite simple. You know, she's just smoking, but you could just see the pain in her eyes, and I know how to describe it. It's just so much to that one expression and that one action of just smoking that it hits me. I did, admittedly, on my first viewing of this movie like 2 years ago, I did admittedly well up at that bit.
Yeah,
I think that they all do a really good job in that scene, considering it's like the family, the Darkos are kind of, they don't speak, so it's a dialogueless. And yet, if you look at, you know, the actor who plays his dad, whose name I don't know, or even Maggie Gyllenhaal, Davy Chase, they are all selling to me the complete breakdown and the devastation. But the kind of key best performance part for me is Jenna Malone, like I said, with that moment of like, no, I didn't know him, but yet she manages to give you that flicker of recognition of like, there's something there, you know, which is pretty hard to pull off, I would imagine. Yeah.
It is just a great scene. Like, you know, yes, I still don't understand every single corner of it, but I just don't care. To be brutally honest, I just don't care anymore. It's like I said, it's about the journey less than the actual, you know, main event. Like just seeing the progression of the mysteries and the twists and everything. And I enjoy picking it apart and determining my own readings of it in my own way, and just I like figuring out for myself. And you know, I may not understand every aspect of it, but I don't care.
Yeah. See, and I would say
that's exactly what I've got in my conclusion for later.
I would say that it explains enough for me that I really like. I can get on board with the stuff it does explain, like the cool thing, the repeated thing about Frank's eye having been shot out, and that's like emphasized in the bunny costume. Like that's where the portal appears, and that's where the light comes from and stuff. And then at the end of the movie, it explains that for you, and I'm like, okay, cool. That's one thing explained that I can latch onto. And even the kind of time travel part, you understand enough to know, like, Donnie's sacrificing himself. He's traveling back in time. He's the one doing it, and he's ultimately making this action. And beyond that, I don't need to understand the how. You know, that's almost as less important than the emotional why he did it. Is like, well, how was he able to? It doesn't matter, almost, you know. So
yeah, the emotion kind of, you know, is what, you know, carries the ending for most people. I think it's like, you know, you may be wondering what does it mean, but you just don't really care. When Mad World starts, you just don't care.
Yeah, I mean, there's things that I like that as I was diving deeper into it, that it does actually sort of imply everything that happens has to lead him to that point. And then when you examine it in that way, a lot of it does make sense, and it's really cool because you're like, well, the way everything has to happen and has to pan out, then because I was like, well, so it seems like some events that occur are pointless. Like, why does he have to burn down the pedophile guy's house? And then I'm like, well, because that's the only way that Kitty would then not be available, which would then mean they were traveling, which would mean they were on the jet engine that he then has to send back. So that's your point right there. And why would he have to flood the school? Because that's when he has to meet Gretchen. Because then he has to. That's all the motivation for kind of going back and everything.
They call it an insurance trap in the.
Yes.
Yeah. Everybody, both the living and the dead, are basically set up as a domino effect to make sure Donnie goes through with it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
The manipulated living and the manipulated dead, they call them.
Yeah. Every action has a purpose and leads into the next point. And it all means something. That's what Frank's actions are there for, just to help lead to the next event. Meets Gretchen, gets him out of the house on the final day and out of the way.
Yeah.
I do like that there is still, even if you watch the very hand-holdy version, there are still some things that it doesn't even try to explain. Like it says that like Donnie becoming the living receiver that has to have this burden. And it says nobody knows how or why a living receiver gets picked. Maybe it's an act of God, maybe it's supernatural forces, but for whatever reason, they'll have like weird, superhuman powers during this tangent universe, and nobody knows why, but they just do. I was like, all right, cool, I'm fine with that.
Yeah, you just accept it and move on to the next bit because it's such a beautifully shot film.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. Oh, can we talk about the direction?
Yeah, definitely. Well, that's what we were going to go on to next. I mean, have you got anything else to say about the writing, Mike?
I mean, it's a very rich, deep movie, whichever way you look at it.
Yeah, there's a lot you can pick apart with this.
Definitely.
Oh, fully, yeah. And I mean, there's a lot of things you could ascribe meaning to. Yeah. I mean, you're always going to bring your own personal take to it. Personally, I kind of respond to the character of Donnie, I think, more than some people might, because I'm somebody that's had like mental health issues and emotional problems. Again, not stabbing my ex-wife multiple times or anything, but like I've been in that position with therapists and stuff where you're like, you feel like nobody quite gets it, and they're like, tell them whatever you want and it'll all be fine, and it'll be, it's like, oh, fuck off, it's not that easy, we are all into things and there's a lot to break down here,
And unlike Jamie, I've actually been in that situation in a classroom with the teacher, so yeah, I can
believe it.
Yeah, it's
I was
people say like Kitty is like over the top in how bitchy she is, but it's like, you tell me you haven't met anyone like her. I have. I've met multiple people like her. Yeah. It's like I don't relate to Donnie like exclusively, or specifically, but I know people, like, not to the extreme, but I know people somewhat like Donnie. And I do understand and sympathize with his struggles. To quite a big extent, from my external perspective, I do relate to like large parts of this film quite a bit.
I think, if I may, I think a lot of us can relate to Donnie because his is the coming of age story, and we've all been that kind of emotional teenager where we're wrestling with our emotions and our hormones, and at the same time trying to understand the adult world that we're kind of stepping into. And like I said, the fact that there's a broad range of emotions, falling in love for the first time, accepting the idea of mortality, and your responsibility, I guess, in a huge way. So,
well, as they say, we're all the stars of our own story, and everybody, regardless of who you are, we all feel like that loner that, maybe there's something about us that's special, kind of thing. It's just with Donnie, that kind of is. I mean, it doesn't work out that great for him, but.
Well, I mean, like I said, I would still say you could particularly, again, I might get grief for it, but I still think you can read the ending as a happy one. It isn't necessarily, desperately sad for Donnie.
Oh, no, it's not, but I think he also plays out in the lyrics of the Mad World song.
Yeah, I was just going to say, because I think that's the key, isn't it? Like, dreams in which I'm dying are the best I've ever had is the whole point of the movie. And, I won't get too far into it, but...
I find it kind of funny. I find it kind of sad. Donnie's laughing. He finds it funny, but his family are sad because he's dead and he's close to them.
Yeah, and I mean, even the fact that the little kids, like when he's talking to Gretchen and they don't say anything about Donnie, it's like, I feel really bad for his family. And it's like, well, yeah, because that's the ones that have to live with it. But he's kind of, his pain's over, I guess, at this point, and he's moved on to whatever else. But I think like I said, he has some pretty inspirational things that I don't want to mention because they're on my favorite line. But I think it's perhaps telling as to what he thinks is going to happen, and it's not necessarily there's oblivion and nothingness.
Yeah.
Anyway,
So yeah, on to direction. Over to you, Jamie. Is anything you want to point out?
All right. I'll start by talking about the scene, then talk about it overall. The head over heels scene is phenomenal, just from a directing perspective. I love that scene so much. And it's like it's the scene I always go to when I talk about the direction for this film. Like, it should be a simple scene. It's just establishing the school and establishing some of the characters, but just the way it's done, like, there's a load of really long one-shot tracking shots to like the corridor, for instance, but it lays out so much information in like all visually in one go, like how it should, it's like, oh, this is the bully character, oh, this woman likes Jim Cunningham, oh, Samantha's dancing, she must be part of a dance group, stuff like that. It just it lays out so much information, and not to mention it's got a banger song alongside it.
The soundtrack is particularly good. I mean, we'll get to that in a bit, but yeah, that is a fantastic opening shot. It conveys so much information in one, long tracking shot. I do like that. I mean, some beautiful imagery there when Frank first wakes Donnie, and you get a glimpse of that kind of fourth dimension with the water and the metal, and then later on, I love how Kelly intercuts some scenes with others, like where Frank's speaking to Donnie about time travel, and it's cutting back and forth to the PTA meeting. And then again later on, when it goes back to Donnie hitting the knife against the barrier with Frank's eye, and it's cutting back and forth with Donnie's parents at the therapists. And then they do it later on with the sparkle motion scene, and at the same time the burning down of Cunningham's house, and it's taking place in Slot. I love those scenes. Love them.
I think it's like it can build tension in like two ways. Like the PTA meeting, for instance, the tension is being built as it's like, oh, everyone's getting more and more restless, complaining about the book. I'm worried about what's going to happen to Karen because she's the one who suggested the book. You're building it like that scene on its own will build tension, and then it's intercut with Donnie meeting Frank in the bathroom. That's quite a tense and chilling scene. So the cut between the two, it's able to build tension in an interesting way. And even something like the talent show, watching any talent show is tense to me because like, oh, don't mess up, and that alongside Donnie getting ready to burn down the house, obviously that's a tense scene because it's dramatic and it's doing something serious, and you don't want to get caught and all that. It's well done, I think.
Yeah. Just to chime in here, if anybody is listening along, by the way, once this is edited and up, we have lost Will, unfortunately. I've been trying to get in touch, and he says he's trying to get in, but it just keeps on sticking on the entry screen for some reason. So it's not letting him. He has posted a review, so I have got his conclusion when it comes to it if he's not able to get back in. But yeah, in the meantime, if you're wondering where he is, we're doing our best, but you are stuck with me, DK, and Jamie, so hopefully that's enough enough for you if you are listening along.
It's not like one of us isn't passionate about the film or something.
Yeah. Fair enough. Absolutely, yeah. But no, you've reminded me of another sort of, not to keep bragging on about the director's cut, the deleted scenes, but in terms of Karen's character, there's a really lovely moment when after once they've banned the Graham Greene book, and she has to start teaching Watership Down, where she's like, well, if alas, I haven't been elected Queen of the Universe, so I've got to follow the rules, but it pains me that you'll never get to experience this kind of beautiful piece of literature. However, if you're seen around school reading it, you will be suspended, but not to worry, because somebody has pre-ordered a dozen copies at the local bookshop down at the mall and prepaid for them. So I was like, I love that kind of rebellious sort of streak in her, So yeah, that was a nice moment.
But yeah, it's like so many good bits of direction. Like the movie theater scene, for instance. It's just the simplicity with it's just Donnie, Gretchen, and Frank there, but Gretchen's asleep, and Donnie and Frank have to talk over it. Basically talk over her. I just think that's an interesting visual. And then obviously with the thing coming through the screen when it's playing Evil Dead, that's a striking visual. And just in general, the film I can describe as like, it's just it's striking overall.
Yeah,
It's a striking, memorable, unique film, and I think the direction aids that massively because it is just, it's very, the direction is very, I guess, for lack of better word, artsy, but it works with this kind of film.
yeah. Even in small scenes where he's explaining to the therapist, and it's as the voiceover is going, he's showing him and Gretchen in slow mo on the trampoline. Loved the little touches. I don't think there's a wasted scene in this. And when you get to certain, things like, we've already discussed it, but the remembrance scene where everyone's waking up to Mad World, it's just beautiful. It's beautiful to look at.
Yeah. Massive.
I think a couple of things. First of all, I think I've mentioned this in other reviews, but I love any movie which has exposition without like bogging it down in plot, and it's quite economical with it. So it does exposition via scenes that are important or that exist not just for that. So like you get to learn all about Donnie's kind of family life and mental problems because they're having an argument with their siblings over dinner, and it's like that's awesome. That's just natural, and it doesn't stop and say, "I'm Donnie, I have mental issues, I'm taking pills, but I'm stopped taking them," and whatever. And yet, all that information is provided to you there. And even like you said, the kind of introducing everybody in the school by basically just doing a montage, of slowed down and accelerated scenes, which again, in a movie that's about time travel, there's an awful lot of like accelerated and slowed down time, which I think is pretty deliberate on the part of Richard Kelly. So
it stands out. It's like just so much information can just be told like visually. Like the very opening, for instance, that opening lives rent free in my head of Donnie on the hill. It's like it can tell you so much. Like Donnie's on the hill. It's like, oh, he's in his pajamas. This isn't natural. And he stands up at the hill and he smiles to himself. So it gives the implication that, oh, this has happened before. So I guess Donnie's a frequent sleepwalker. And it's like, it's a simple scene, told through one facial expression, and you can just understand everything. Well, not everything you need to know about his character, but you can understand a key part of his character, and it's a very integral part of his character. This is what initially saves his life from the jet engine.
Yeah.
Yeah, but again, like even in that, it's enough without getting into it by a clunky exposition. It's like in that scene you learn he sleepwalks, but it doesn't necessarily bother him because he kind of finds it amusing. And yet he goes back home and the family are aware because there's the "where is Donnie" on the fridge, and his mum's like, "Well, where do you go at night?" So you get a lot of information just from that. Again, it's very economical storytelling and direction, which I love.
It's just a tight film overall. Direction, writing, pacing. It's tight. It's a very tight film.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And he still manages to include the surest sign of something set in the 80s, which is basically a group of kids pedaling on bikes down a road.
Yes, very Stranger Things a decade or two before we actually got it, wasn't it? But, I will say, though, you mentioned it already, but probably my favorite single scene in the movie is that scene where it's like the lockers and the school office on a sea of water in the clouds, because that is the closest I've ever seen anybody get to like what my dreams look like, put on an actual image, because that is so trippy and weird. And yet there's logic there. I mean, it's not like the most unusual thing. It's just water and environments, but it's.
But they don't. What I love about it is they don't try and explain it.
No, because it's a dream. I mean, that's the whole point.
Yeah.
A dream, and it's like, well, what is it about?
But overall, it's like this is like I think we can agree that this is a very weird, trippy film. But it's like that weird, trippy film. They're not really my thing. I don't particularly click with a lot of them. And I'm not the biggest fan of them. I prefer simple, straight to the point films with like clear narratives.
Yeah.
But
I just criticized Twin Peaks: The Return. I'm clearly not a fan of ambiguous bullshit.
Like I don't mind ambiguousness, but just like so long as the main like narrative makes sense.
Yeah.
But I can't put my finger on why this movie's the main exception. Because
I
don't
love
think
it's as trippy as people think. That's the thing. Because I wouldn't necessarily say it's that trippy of an experience. I think it's a beautiful experience, and it's almost dreamlike in the way that good cinema can be, but it's very baby's first David Lynch in a sense, like there's nothing super weird.
I think that's where I don't have a problem with ambiguity in film if it's done well, which Donnie Darko does, because it doesn't just rely on narrative; it relies on your own experience and emotions to pull you through. And I find that with a lot of Lynch stuff, not all of it, don't get me wrong, but I think Donnie Darko does it beautifully. And without getting into it, I'm hesitant to see a sequel to it because I think it stands out just perfectly on its own, and I think anything coming along might devalue it.
I didn't think there was a sequel coming, and when you read out that there was going to be one, my heart did sink a little bit.
Yeah, I'm very, very skeptical about, because like you, I think it's a perfect little self-contained story. And even as I haven't watched it, but like reading the synopsis for S. Darko and stuff, I'm like, oh, this just feels horribly unnecessary and just retreading things which makes them less special and less important, and kind of I don't like it. It leaves a bad taste. But yeah, I mean, I can't put my finger on what it is about this that I enjoy in terms of, because I'm like Jamie, I don't really like, just weird trippiness or ambiguous visuals or stuff that's there for the sake of it. But there are moments that work, and I think it's partly nostalgia, having grown up in the 80s, and partly that sort of weird, the way it's filmed, the sort of grain, I guess, that it has on, and I don't know, there's something about it that just flows over you nicely. Sorry, Jamie, you were saying.
I think there's like two things which I can think of off the top of my head, which is why it works. First of all, the characters are interesting and engaging and entertaining, so I'm carried through the narrative thanks to the characters, which I can get into. And second, I think the film it is confusing, but I think it treads the fine line between being what the actual hell to being okay. I think I've got it, maybe. Just need to think about it a bit more, and I think that second camp, it leans more into that camp, and I prefer that camp because it means I'm not completely lost. It means I'm more willing to just figure out for myself why what does the film mean, and it leaves me thinking about the film months after watching it. And it just helps also with the rewatchability, as I'm always willing to rewatch it to try and see if I can understand it that like 1% more. And stuff like that. I think it's just it gives it gives the impression that you can figure it out if you put in the time and effort. It's not like from what I can tell from David Lynch films where you just have no clue what's happening at all. Well,
yes and no. I mean, like I said, that's why I like the first couple of seasons of Twin Peaks, because there are moments that are similar to this where it's like they're trippy, but they have an internal logic, I guess, to them. And yet, like I said, I don't like a lot of Lynch films and that last season of Twin Peaks, because a lot of it was just like, here's some random shit that's happening. Why? We don't care. And it's like, well,
yeah, my friend watched.
Give me something.
One of my friends watched Mulholland Drive recently, and he's I've friends with him for a decent while, so he knows what my film tastes are like. And after watching it, he just turned to me and was like, "Don't watch this film. It is not for you."
Yeah, I've kind of been saying that to Mike. It's my favorite film of all time, and I don't think Mike's going to enjoy it.
Yeah, but you thought I was going to prefer the director's cut of this movie, and I just
honestly did. When you got back to me and said I've watched the director's cut, and frankly, I prefer the theatrical cut, I almost dropped my phone.
Yeah, I'm an enigma. You can't figure me out.
This film is just an enigma all on its own.
It is. And what worries me about the fact that Kelly's possibly coming back to do a sequel is you do see it from time to time with the directors that have made a good film, gone on to things that haven't been as well received. And invariably, sometimes they come back to their first glory in the hope they're going to recapture it. And that's what worries me about this, because let's be honest, the movies that Kelly's made since this haven't been that well received.
What works about this film is, I'd say it's only really the ending which most people are confused about, like, what does it all mean and whatnot. It's not like the average scene is a trippy, weird, what the hell just happened scene. It's it makes sense. There's a regular story about a kid in school coming of age. You've got the coming of age stuff, which is just normality, peace, tranquility, just something you can actually grasp and relate to, which gets you engaged with the film. It's only like at the end when it becomes more weird, but it's not as big of a deal because you're not your brain isn't already frazzled.
Yeah. I think the biggest issue that I could identify is the one that they actually point out when on the director's cut and in the behind the scenes and stuff, which is if you don't know, the majority of the film is supposed to take place in this tangent universe, which is created when the jet engine first lands. So this is like not the prime universe. That's on pause while we're living in the tangent universe, but that can't exist for longer than a few weeks. So that's the 28 days. And Donnie has to kind of correct everything by putting it back to the prime universe. But the film gives absolutely no indication visually, in dialogue or anything, that you've entered this tangent universe. It just carries on as it would normally.
And it still kind of works.
Yeah. I mean, it works because that's when you start seeing trippy stuff and you understand that you're going back to a set point on that day, you know, when the jet engine fell. And there's a lot of talk of this artifact being the key thing that's, you know, between universes, that's the error or the issue or whatever. And I mean, I get it. But like I said, it wouldn't have killed them to have at least some indication that you are now entering a parallel universe or an alternate timeline.
But I think at that point, a lot of people would tune out.
Maybe.
I mean, as it stands, it's an intriguing piece of cinema that, as Jamie said earlier, it makes you think, it makes you want to get more involved. I think if you start throwing alternate universes at people immediately, it's going to, you know, turn a lot of people off.
The film is dealing with time travel, though, and it's making no secret of that. So it's dealing with that from like minute 40 or whatever when he starts asking Noah Wyle about it. So it's not like people aren't aware of that. And the entire thing, the crux of the whole thing is going back and rewriting stuff to a different timeline because we know things happen differently there than what actually occurred. So, but
what I'm saying is you've got people bringing their own experience into it and try and figure it out for themselves. If you put in what is official, kind of the official explanation, I think it would leave a lot of people cold because it doesn't allow them to give their own interpretation and not feel as close to it. I think as it stands, they kind of feel this kind of kindred with it.
Yeah, I think it's more fun to dig for your own answers than have it explained to you.
Yeah.
See, I just would have preferred, like, you don't have to make it super explicit or anything, but, like, for example, there's that really cool directorial moment when he has the school bus at a complete 90-degree angle, and it's, like, unsettling. And I was like, if that had been the kind of key point where it's not pointed out to you, but you could surmise if you wanted to, that's where the universe, you know, resets or whatever. But it's not. It's just that just exists as a weird bit of directorial flourish. And I'm like, you could have done something like that, you know? It wouldn't have been too difficult, surely, you know? But again, that's probably me and my kind of hand-holdiness, I guess, coming through. And it doesn't bother me that it's not there. It's just, like you said, there's no real indication that that's what Kelly was aiming for. And I think that's kind of if I'm going to argue the point, that's kind of a flaw in his writing that, well, how are you supposed to figure that out? You know? But yeah, anyway.
I think the production as it stands on its own, if you're gonna look, you're either gonna watch this movie and be caught up in it, be extremely interested in it, or you're gonna watch it and I can imagine my parents doing this, sitting down watching it, cutting away and thinking, well, what the hell was that? And the people that are caught up in it, they are going to kind of explore and get into it a little more, and I like that it seems to kind of encourage. And you know, it's not one of these. Not going down that path where you said, "Oh, I like movies that make you think." You know, we all want brainless entertainment from time to time, but I do like the fact that if you are interested in it, you can look it up yourself. You can look straight up explanation or try and figure it out for yourself. I love that puzzle box aspect of it.
It's not a movie which just makes me think. It's mostly just a movie which sticks with me. Like that's what I always like look for. Just something which can play in my mind for a while. Like usually it is to make me think, but sometimes a movie can just be really entertaining, really simple with its messages or anything, and just straight to the point. But if I can relate to it, it just sticks with me for a good while afterwards. And those are like what I look for in movies. And Donnie Darko is a prime example of one of those movies because it sticks in my mind for ages after every rewatch, and I just love it.
That was going to be my point. It's not so much that it makes you think, it's more that it's a film that you want to dive deeper into because you care, because the direction and the acting and stuff it engrosses you in the world enough to think, oh, I want to know more about this. Is there a mythos behind it? Are there explanations? Are there interpretations? I want to know more, as opposed to just being, I'll turn it off and forget about it tomorrow. And I mean, there are films that do that are bad. I mean, I mentioned to you when we did our Prometheus review that it led me down a terrible path of looking up every bit of alien information on the Alien Wiki, because as much as the film's terrible, the world that it inhabits is an interesting one where I'm like, well, I'm intrigued as to what exists in this world. At least I don't want to just turn it off and forget about it.
If I had time, I would have rewatched the making of documentary on the Blu-ray before the podcast, so I could get my own facts. But I just didn't have enough time.
I was saying to DK, like I did a little bit of research on the internet, but I do want to definitely go in and watch the behind the scenes features, and especially the commentaries, and in particular the director's cut has a commentary with Kelly and Kevin Smith, which I'm like, that's got to be interesting, surely.
But the main making of documentary. The title's bad. It says The Philosophy of Donnie Darko. It's not about the philosophy at all. It's a making of documentary. Like, that's a bad title, but aside from that, I think it's really strong making of documentary, really interesting.
On the director's cut disc, there's a 2-part documentary just called "They Made Me Do It" as well, which is a completely separate like making of. But again, I haven't seen it.
So I've seen The Philosophy of Donnie Darko.
Right, going on from directing now, the FX. Anybody got anything to say about the FX for the most part?
I only really have one note, and it was just what I told you, which is that it looks like very basic previs from The Abyss when he starts seeing the time tracks or whatever you call them.
I'd say the effects are like the one part of the movie which have slightly dated, but like only like I know it was 2001. Obviously, visual effects were still in there, in their early days, and they aren't in it that much, so it doesn't take me out of the film. And sometimes there are really good effects, like the flooded school, for instance. That one looks really good. It's just like the wormhole, for instance, can be a bit off, but it's not a big issue for me at all.
It doesn't bother me because it to me it basically adds to the trippy dreamlike quality because it doesn't look real, and that kind of in a way that makes it more abstract in that way, and so I'm fine with it. But I mean, even not necessarily just that scene, but the scenes, like I said, I absolutely adore the scenes when he's like punching the mirror and it becomes like water rippling, and then that is reflected in Frank's eye, and that becomes the portal, and like that is not easy to do with special effects in 2001, and yet it looks incredible.
I think the only thing that does kind of let it down in my opinion is what you've said, the kind of future blobs. They look a little dated now. And the bit where he gets enveloped in Gretchen's and his eyes open wide, it's like a Soundgarden video from the early 90s kind of thing.
Pitch Meeting didn't need to edit their thumbnail. They could have just photoshopped that thing. I hate the Pitch Meeting thumbnails with a passion.
With the big eyes, that's the one. Yeah. I forgot about that until you've just mentioned it just now, DK, and that is Guardians of the Galaxy Volume 2. We're going to warp level of ridiculous.
Those are my two things that come to my mind: Guardians of the Galaxy 2 and Pitch Meeting.
But no, I mean, other than that, the visual effects aren't the point of the film, really, are they? So
and it never reaches Scorpion King level, so
no, very few things do, thankfully.
On sound design and the soundtrack, any notes with regards to this?
I love the music.
The 80s music is just amazing. Such well-picked tracks for every moment as well.
What's the first song called? When he's on the bike. What's that song called?
That's Killing Moon by Echo and the Bunnymen.
I know, just a great song which works. Like whenever I rewatch the film, it's like when that music comes on, I get strangely hyped for the rest of the movie.
Well, weirdly enough, in the director's cut, they don't use that track.
No.
The track that they replace it with "Never Tear Us Apart" by In Excess, and Mike.
Song, by the way.
Mike found a quote. Where did you find this, actually, Mike?
I have no idea. I know I sent it to you, but I can't remember where I found it. It might have been on the Donnie Darko wiki or something, but I found it somewhere.
It's basically with regards to this soundtrack change, replacing Killing Moon by Echo and the Bunnymen to Never Tear Us Apart by NXS. It says the new soundtrack received considerable criticism, with several commentators bemoaning the decision to replace Killing Moon with Never Tear Us Apart for the opening sequence. Wampler felt the song didn't fit nearly as well, while Sims described it as being horribly mismatched. Ash Cantrell of Film School Rejects echoed this sentiment, argued that the soundtrack got turned into a kind of pile of crap. In an interview with British music magazine NME, Ian McCulloch, the lead singer of Echo and the Bunnymen, branded Kelly a knobhead for making the change.
Love it. Such a peculiarly British insult anyway, just calling anybody a knobhead.
Yeah,
no, I
I
will
don't
say
think we have to describe that for Adrian, because normally she asks what these British colloquialisms are.
Yeah, don't Google it though, Adrian. Whatever.
Yeah,
I will say I disagree with the complaints on that. Having now watched the director's cut, because I do think "Never Tear Us Apart" still works. I don't think it works as well, but it's such a good song and it still powers you through. So to me, it's just an interesting alternative. It doesn't make it worse.
I'll be honest. As I told you earlier, I put the Blu-ray on earlier today, and I could tell that I put the director's cut on accidentally disc rather than theatrical, because In Excess started playing, but it still kind of works.
It does, yeah. Yeah, I mean, it's got that same weird quality of, I guess, hauntingness and that weird, trippy, flowing nature to it, which perfectly plays over the sleepwalking and then everybody introduced in slow-mo. And it's just a bloody good song as well, which helps, you know.
But I mean, it's full of them, this. I mean, that Tears for Fears song, as they're doing that intro, going down the corridor in the school at the start. I love that.
Yeah, Jamie mentioned that, I think, earlier,
yeah. Banger song. But even then, even outside of the pre-existing songs, just the general the music, the more ambient music is just really strong. I think the one which stuck out to me was, I think it was used in the credits as well, and it was the cinema scene, the music used there.
Yeah,
operatic. Operatic music. It just feels it's ominous but beautiful at the same time.
I like the little refrain that Michael Andrews uses whenever it's cutting back to Donnie in the bathroom speaking with Frank, and it's used, I think, again in the scene where he's calling Cunningham the Antichrist.
I did. I noticed a lot of that thing, but the most powerful use for me was the very first appearance of Frank, where I noticed that there's no music, but there's such the sound design is so ethereal and weird that it really adds to the kind of nightmare dream-like quality. And maybe that's the key that we're in a different universe. I don't know, but the way that the sound plays perfectly is what I'm a little disturbed, but not in a scary way. It's just a bit unsettling, and and yet weirdly beautiful with it as well. So yeah, I liked all that.
Yeah, and of course you can't let the soundtrack go without bringing up Mad World.
Do we have to? I mean, I would have been fine with it, but it was played to fucking death in this country because
it was just Christmas number.
It was
one.
Christmas number one.
Yeah, it killed it for me. Sorry, just nope.
I loved it in the soundtrack for this, but after 3 weeks of seeing him singing while he's turning around on bloody baubles, I was just no.
Well, luckily, I hadn't suffered from Mad World fatigue, so I loved the use of it.
It's great in the movie, but I'm just so sick of that song. It's the same way that Everything I Do It For You is a great song if you're watching Robin Hood, Prince of Thieves, but after 17 weeks of hearing it in the charts,
you do tend to want to go out
I
with,
watched Prince
to
of
see
Thieves
Brian
the
Adams
other
with a
week,
bat.
and my mum had PTSD when that song came up because she was just
believe me, I
every
can
single
relate.
day at the factory I used to work at had that freaking song.
Yeah, number one for months on end. It was ridiculous.
And meanwhile, I'm over here I recognize that song on some Disney logo or something.
Anyway, yeah.
Great. Once again, that time to see what our own personal little moments of genius were. I'm going to go around, ask your favourite character, moment, scene, line from the movie. And then before we get to our conclusions, we'll have a look and see what the audience had to say. So first off, we'll go for favourite character. And on this, we'll start with you, Jamie, then Mike, and then myself. So who's your favourite character and why?
Oh, it's a tough one. It's a toss-up between Eddie and Karen. Eddie because he's caring for a start, but also he gets some load of laughs out of me. And Karen because she's the most legendary teacher I've ever seen in anything.
Fantastic. I did like that. Nobody mentioned it. I did like the scene at the start where Eddie uses the leaf blower on Elizabeth as she's trying to talk to him.
It's Eddie is exactly like my dad, so I see a lot of my dad in him. With
regards to Elizabeth, apparently Kelly was hesitant with her at the first, but he had it pointed out that she was in. I'm not sure if any of you guys have seen it. Cecil B. Demented.
I haven't
Haven't heard
no.
of it.
And apparently Kelly really liked the way that she drank urine in that movie.
Oh,
Make of that what you will.
sure, yeah.
Okay, then
No,
let's move on.
So what's your favourite character, Mike?
I could have picked any number of characters. There's a lot of great ones, as I'm saying, and but yet for me it comes down to Donnie because, like I said, for me he's very relatable. I think he is anyway for anybody who's been through that like angsty period. But you couple it with having sort of mental issues and not knowing his place in the world, but yet being special, I guess, in his literal case. So to me, I think that's plus he's the heart and mind of the film. So for me, if that performance doesn't work, if that character isn't likable, the film collapses in its own way. And thankfully, Gyllenhaal does a great job, and the character is really compelling, and you just want to watch him throughout. Or I do. So I went with Donnie.
Yeah, I probably should clarify. I do think Donnie is the objective best character. Just when I was asking my favorite, I was just going for the more humorous characters, the more entertaining ones.
Oh, and I could fully have picked definitely Karen, at least, as you said, because for such a small little role, the impact is huge. And if we're not necessarily going favorite in terms of likability, then as I said, Kitty is a fantastically played and well-grown character, but likable she ain't,
Yeah, I've got to go with Donnie myself. I mean, I don't know about anybody else, but that's exactly how I was at school. Well, minus the powers of talking to a human bunny, but yeah.
I wasn't that cool.
I was talking to plushy bunnies.
If anything, I was probably Samantha Darko. I was probably just sparkle motioning on the stage somewhere.
Oh, see, now if there's anybody out there that has footage of this, contact us. I want to see this shit.
It's out there. I did do modern dance for a while when I was in high school, unfortunately.
Oh man.
I'd say I'd probably most like Elizabeth.
Well, you dated Frank. That's
Richard Kelly likes the way you drink urine.
I've never done that. Don't worry.
That's the episode title right there.
Richard Kelly likes the way you drink urine. Oh God.
Well, we'll stick with you, Jamie. What's your favourite scene in this?
Right. Just need to get a drink first. First of all, Papa Smurf didn't create Smurfette. Gargamel did. She was sent in as Gargamel's evil spy with the intention of destroying the Smurf village, but the overwhelming goodness of the Smurf way of life transformed her. And as for the whole gangbang scenario, it just couldn't happen. Smurfs are asexual. They didn't have reproductive organs under those little white pants. That's what's so illogical, about being a Smurf. What's the point of living if you don't have a dick?
That's your favourite scene, then, yeah?
Well, okay, that's the most humorous scene. I'd say my actual favourite scene is probably just the Mad World sequence at the very end. But I just think it's funny to say the Smurf scene.
Yeah, I'm surprised nobody's brought that up until now.
I mentioned it when we were talking about the humor. I said it was absolute gold, but I thought I had to quote the whole thing. Why not?
Well, apparently Kelly was on the phone to the company that owned the rights to the Smurfs because he wanted a Smurf to use in that scene for having him shooting at him. And that's when they actually confirmed they could use that dialogue in the movie for the Smurfs because it's pretty accurate.
What, including Vanity being gay?
I can't get into. I have no idea about that. What's your favourite scene, Mike?
My favorite scene is, well, again, I could pick any number of them because it's a beautiful movie and I enjoyed watching the entirety of it. But the scene that hit the most for me was the reveal of Frank. Because like I said, even though it doesn't explain everything, I liked that explanation of like, once you've seen Gretchen killed, then, you just see a footstep out of the car and it pans up and it's Frank in the bunny suit. And then following that, you see Donnie hold the gun and shoot him in the eye. And so that entire sequence to me was a great moment of recognition and like, whoa, I totally know what's happening here whilst also understanding nothing. So I kind of love that.
Yeah, that is a good one. When I first watched it, I couldn't believe Gretchen. He'd run over Gretchen himself.
Yeah.
I'm going to go with the cinema scene where they're speaking. As Sunday mentioned earlier, I forget who it was. The music in that just elevated that.
Oh, Jim.
Yeah, I thought that was a fantastic scene.
It's a good thing, like I said, the fact that they used that as the promo and the first thing in the trailer, look at the movie screen, is something I want to show you, is very evocative right there. So, yeah.
Actually, can I change my favorite scene? Can I say all the scenes?
No.
Okay.
I mean, you can, but you've already picked one now.
Yeah, but I'm saying like your picks are totally valid. Like you could pick any scene from this movie, and I would understand.
Yeah.
Throw a dart at a scene, and that's it. I like that. So absolutely.
What about your favorite line, Jamie? Have you got one?
As for like a single line, probably, Kitty saying like,
I'll tell you what he said. He asked me to forcibly insert the lifeline exercise card into my anus.
Nice.
What about you, Mike?
I hate doing this, but I have to give you a top three again. But never mind, I have a number one.
Goodness.
But my number three for comedy value is definitely.
Sometimes I doubt your commitment to sparkle motion.
It's just the way she's so earnest with it, and yet it's a friggin' like 8-year-old's dance class. It's hilarious, the juxtaposition of like, I'm so incredulous and it's so stupid, sparkle motion. Anyway, my number two was going to be.
And what if you could go back in time and take all those hours of pain and darkness and replace them with something better?
I was like, that's a cheat because that's just basically the movie in mini form. So I was like, I don't want to pick that as my number one. My number one was something I alluded to earlier, which is Donnie in the end when he says,
I hope that when the world comes to an end, I can breathe a sigh of relief because there will be so much to look forward to.
And that hits on the crux of my personal understanding of like him coming to terms with death and that it doesn't have to be this big empty void of oblivion. There's beauty in it, and there's you can now relax, I guess. So yeah.
Actually, I've got another line I want to mention real quick. Like I forgot to mention it because I'm too busy talking about meme lines. But I love the
Why are you wearing that stupid bunny suit? Why are you wearing that stupid man suit?
I can read into that in various ways. Like it's sort of, Donnie pretending to be like everyone else, pretending to be like, a quote unquote normal human, even though he's different. It's like it's sort of like he's wearing a man suit when really he's something completely different. That's what I read into it, at least.
Interesting.
Yeah,
that's cool. That's a good way of looking at that.
That's a good interpretation. I like that. I've got a couple. I do like the little exchange at the start.
You're weird.
Sorry.
Yeah, that was a compliment.
But I'm going to go with that. Mike's already mentioned it. What if you could go back in time, take all those hours of pain and darkness, and replace them with something better? It is pretty much the movie, but I do love it.
It is great. But then again, you've got a couple that as well with because even that the movie doesn't let sit. I really love the moment when they're explaining they're kind of like, we're going to give good images to babies and stuff, and Noah Wiley just said.
And did you stop and think that maybe infants need darkness? That maybe darkness is part of their natural development?
No.
So, as I said, before we go to the conclusions, we'll have a look at the audience participations. But before I hand you over to Mike, I just want to say that if you enjoyed the show today and want to comment, you want to disagree, or you think there's something we didn't give enough attention to or missed, please don't hesitate to get in touch, either on our social media pages, links in the description, or leave a comment on our YouTube page. And for everyone that has submitted a response in time for today's recording, thank you. But even then, it's not too late. We're always open to hearing your thoughts on the shows. So, without further ado, here's Mike with the audience response. Over to you, Mike. Any good ones?
Yeah, we have a few. I mean, people have strong thoughts about this film one way or the other. So we have DK's friend and friend of the show, Nick Herring, who said, it's a dark, quirky, and original feature debut from writer-director Richard Kelly. Donnie Darko is a real mix of genres and tones. It's very open to interpretation, causing much discussion, which I love in a film. I've never actually seen the director's cut, as I understand it's a bit more explicit in explaining events and in a way that didn't gel with my feelings, which is fine. A great cast on top form and filled with memorable moments. I think anyone should give it a try, whether they end up enjoying it or not. As far as I'm aware, it was all downhill from here for Kelly. I've never tried the much maligned and unnecessary sequel. It stands on its own. Yeah, I don't think any of us are keen to jump into S Darko anytime soon. But
I mean, every month I like watching, because I do like monthly YouTube film rankings. I like having variety, so I do try to pick a bad movie to watch anyway. So I'll be watching S Darko at some point.
Fair enough. There's a conversation here. I'm not sure where. I think it was DK that sent me to it. And it may just be between friends in a text exchange. But someone called Ian SKNNE.
I put up a post on Facebook saying, last chance saloon. Anybody have any thoughts on Donnie Darko?
Cool. So Ian says, it's proper dark. On a more serious note, it's one of those movies I knew absolutely nothing about going into, and just remember thinking it's like being in a crazy dream, and upon ending, I was both confused and pleasantly pleased that I just watched a good effing movie. LOL. L. Wilkie says, I really like it, as I like weird films like this anyway. I don't like the end, though. Yeah, I know it has to end that way. And Aaron Bossig says, excellent film, one that makes you rethink it several times before you fully form your opinion of it. Stellar cast and direction. And I have a couple more amusing ones here. Nat on Letterboxd gave the film 5 stars, and I love this review. It just says, me, this is a masterpiece. Also me, has to Google, what is Donnie Darko about?
I had that review right up right now because I was going to read it out myself if you hadn't already.
I love that. And finally, the comprehensive review of the week goes to L. Wilkie, who responds, great film. Thanks for that deep and powerful insight, L.
I like Shannon's review on Letterboxd, as it just says, sometimes I doubt your commitment to sparkle motion.
Yes, I love it. Sorry, I should say, actually, I almost forgot the most important one, which is Sandy on our Discord did actually give me her usual lengthy review as well. That's Tachyon_15 or Sandra Evanson, you'll have heard around the podcasts. She says, okay, my interaction. The first time I watched this movie, it was very unsettling and scary, but I couldn't take my eyes away. The second time I watched it, it became this story told from the perspective of an unreliable narrator that stayed in my mind for days. Each subsequent rewatch, it's like re-entering a tangent universe and going in for another loop. Having seen it several times now, I'm all in on the philosophy of time travel. I love its contemplations of free will versus predestination and how it draws from symbolism found in literature. At times, the direction and dialogue is awkward and unreal, but at other times, the conversation and acting are so natural, the switch can be jarring. The casting is mostly very fun, but the silly bullies didn't quite pull it off. All of this is easily forgiven. As a causal sequence of events unfolds, the late 80s brooding music, along with the camera work and editing, make Donnie Darko a whole mood. But what really puts the Roberta in my Sparrow is the science fiction Richard Kelly posits and the philosophy his dialogue contemplates. Oops, it's longish again. It's just so complicated and special. Thanks, Sandy, for that. And that's it this time, I promise.
Awesome.
I've got to say, it's nice to be able to talk about this movie with spoilers, because I wrote a Letterboxd review earlier today, but I don't like having spoilers in my reviews, so it was a bit of a, cut and paste review, to put it simply, trying to not spoil the film for anyone. So it's nice to just express all of my opinions with a spoiler environment.
Yeah.
Nice
is
one.
it cool, by the way, if I read out Will's conclusion first, because I do have it?
Yeah, we're going to say thank you to everyone that gave us a response. Now we know what you think. It's time to see what we thought of it. So, yeah, we'll start with Will's, and then we'll go to Jamie, yourself, Mike, and then me. So go for it.
Awesome. So Will just said, what a film. So many things are going on, but with a driving plot, excellent performances, and a killer soundtrack, it hits so hard. It's weird, but hits close to home with its mental health discussions that was spliced well across the film. Donnie is like Matt Damon's character in Good Will Hunting, dialed up to 11, and he gives it 4 stars out of 5.
Okay.
You dropped a star.
And what about you, Jamie? What's your thoughts and score?
Right, I don't have a written conclusion because I do have a lot to say.
Yeah, you do. It's on Letterboxd.
Well, yeah, I do, but that's a long review that I've trudged over a lot of it. I'm gonna just wing the conclusion, but I'll just go with it. So, Donnie Darko is one of my top 5 favorite films of all time. I love basically everything about it. It's weird, but in the best way. It keeps me it captivates me. It makes me engage with the characters. The characters are all really strong. The pace is sharp. The writing's sharp. Everything's just really engaging about it, and it lingers in my mind and leaves me, thinking about the movie for a while afterwards. And that's what my favorite movies do. But like a lot of my other favorite movies, it just has the elements I like. Like, it has the humor. It has the interesting characters. It has just deeper parts to it, and I love it. But I think the real reason I love the movie is because I'd argue that this was the movie which got me into analyzing movies. Like, it was this film where I just wanted to break it down. I wanted to, uncover it, and I wanted to do some kind of analysis on this movie. I still haven't done that analysis, by the way, but I wanted to, and it's led to me doing analysis on other movies, and that's what my YouTube channel focuses on now, because that's what I've realized I enjoy doing the most. So, yeah, I have Donnie Darko to thank for my current stuff on YouTube, but yeah, that's the real reason I love it so much. It's inspired me creatively. So for that and just everything I love about it, it's a 5 stars for me, easily.
Oh, nice. All right, go for it,
next.
Mike.
Okay, sorry about this being long-winded and written, but that's how I do it, as I've said before. But I just said, a film that's just beautifully directed, brilliantly crafted, and a work of obvious care and affection. It's weird, but whilst I don't fully understand it, I do get it. What I mean is that the emotions, the themes, and the tone all come through and really affect me. I'm not going to claim to be an expert, but diving into this movie for the first time in 2 decades, I found it a far more emotional and intense experience that I now really want to know more about. What I pick up is a film that truly captures the human experience of growing up and developing your sense of self. The film seems to emphasize the strengths and weird beauty of nihilism. There's a now classic episode of Doctor Who where a character says that sad is happy for deep people. That's the vibes this film gives off. And yet it's oddly life-affirming as well. For me, it says that regardless of any thoughts of religion, philosophy, or the meaning of life, the most important thing is how we've lived, the choices we've made, and how we affect others. Donnie ultimately dies for love. It literally tears him apart. He'll never get to affect Gretchen again, but this final act of love literally saves her life. Heavy themes. But it must be said that this is only my interpretation, and it is definitely one of those films where the ambiguity is a strength, and it can certainly mean different things to different people. There's a lot here, and I could analyze it for far longer than the length of a podcast. Ultimately, I still slightly prefer a film with a clearer narrative, but this is still a truly great piece where at the very least you can enjoy the performances, look, music, feel, tone, and frankly, the experience. Pure cinema. And I gave it 4.5 out of 5.
Mm.
Fair enough.
Nice one. Right, I love Donnie Darko from the first viewing, and having watched it only a few hours prior to this recording, I love it just as much now. Richard Kelly created a beautiful, ambiguous puzzle box that pulls you in and doesn't let go until the credits are rolling. The writing and direction convey a sense of futility in the lives of the youth of Middlesex and the apathy of the parents, while crafting a spectacular sci-fi/horror thriller with a sense of impending doom around it. The performances sell you wholeheartedly on the premise, and no, it's not easy. No, it doesn't spoon feed you. And while I don't profess to completely understand every aspect of it, even now, I can't help but love it. It's a mood, but more importantly to me, it's a work of art. And I give it 5.
I now have the average then, because I figured you were going to do that. So
go
on
then, Mike. Really, Mr. I think this is a cult classic. He's giving it 5 stars.
Yeah, I kind of gathered. But yeah, so we are including Will's score because he was here at the start and would have been on the episode. So taking all 4 of those scores, dividing it by 4, gives Donnie Darko the quite whopping score of 4.625 out of 5, Jeez. Which has got to be one of our highest, especially for a 4-person review. Got to be one of our highest rated.
I'm surprised, Mike, because I know this film isn't for everyone. Like, there are some people who just don't get it, but it's like I'm surprised that generally we all really liked it.
Yeah, I would say so. I mean, Will was the least on board, and he still gave it 4 stars. So
I mean, for me, if I give a film 5 stars, I'm satisfied with any. I'm satisfied with any rating, like up to 4 stars, I'd say.
Absolutely agreed. And nobody really hated it, so that's good. Yeah, back to you.
Yeah, even in the audience participation, everyone seems to have a generally favourable opinion.
Yeah, exactly.
So yeah,
also, just as like a random point I wanted to mention, just like not to do with the film, but just with how I watched it. This viewing was absolutely my favourite viewing so far. Like, I loved my initial viewing, but my rewatch last year. I rewatched it in October, and October is a winter month, and so the sun is at awkward angles. Let's just say it was peeking through my curtains, and for a film with a lot of dark scenes, it was the definition of distracting. So I was kind of wondering, like, after my viewing last year, like, oh, do I really love the film that much? But after my rewatch today, yeah, that last viewing was just a dud viewing.
Cool. Yeah, I really enjoyed it. I think I made the mistake of watching the director's cut directly afterwards because it is so similar, that it was a slog to get through everything I'd literally seen a day before.
Yeah, that's
so I kind
why
of wish
I
I'd given it a bit of space. yeah, I get that.
Cool. So that's it from us this episode. All that's left to thank is my fellow time travelers. So thanks as usual to Mike for being a mensch. Anything in particular you want to draw the listeners' attention to while we're here?
No, not at all. They can always find all of our links and information in the descriptions. If you have enjoyed this and you'd like to keep us, ticking over financially, you can always tip us or buy us a coffee with our Ko-fi link that's in the description. And if you'd like to, you can still, for a while at least, submit a film that you would like us to review. Thanks to our 200 subscribers special that we did. We've only had a couple in so far. So again, if you want to submit that by any of our social media links, by the comments on YouTube, please do. And we'll either put it into a draw, or if something gets an overwhelming positive response and a lot of people pick it, then we'll just go with that.
Yeah, and we definitely want a different suggestion to the one Will's given us.
Yeah.
So, how about you, Jimmy? Thank you to you for joining us, by the way. And anywhere everybody can reach you?
My YouTube channel, J Productions, because this is specifically film stuff. So YouTube channel J Productions is where I do film content.
Great channel, by the way.
My monthly film rankings, for instance. Donnie Darko will be on my May ranking because I watched it in May, and alongside certain other films which don't go alongside Donnie Darko at all. Got some variety in there. Like 1 minute I'll be talking about Robin Hood Men in Tights, then I'll be talking about Donnie Darko.
Well, we'll put the links in the description, and so if anybody, please, folks out there in the normal world, please check them out. You won't regret it. Also, if you enjoyed today's episode, please like, subscribe, tell your friends. If you'd like to appear on the show as a guest, drop us a line, or if you've got any suggestions for the movies, as Mike said, you'd like to see covered, we're always listening. Our next cult episode, we'll see Mike, myself, and Guest desperately trying to find out which one of us has the touch. And if you haven't guessed it at that, here's Mike with another little audio clue. Fantastic. As for which one, you'll just have to tune in next week and find out. As for our regular episodes, do you want to tell them what we'll be covering in upcoming episodes, Mike?
Yeah, I have a list for the next sort of a few weeks that are coming up. So we have got, obviously, that cult episode. We're going to be going over to our Star Trek podcast and actually beginning the full series of that coming up on June the 11th. That's going to be starting Klingon episodes if you're into all things Trek. As for things here, following that cult episode, there's going to be a very special episode with myself, Toby, and anybody else who wants to join, where we review Justice League, the Flashpoint Paradox, and the Flash episode Flashpoint. Obviously, that's to tie in with a particular film release that might be happening. We've also got, myself, Stephen, and DK are going to be reviewing Raiders of the Lost Ark to tie in with another release on June the 29th.
So until then, thank you for joining us. We look forward to seeing you next time. And instead of the usual sign-off, ask yourself this. Why are you wearing that stupid man suit?
I'll be back.
You have been listening to the Silver Screen Podcast, hosted by Michael Wilson and DK. Created, produced, and edited by Michael Wilson. Behind the scenes sections and additional material produced by DK. Music by Timeless Journey. More information can be found at soundcloud.com/Timeless Journey. Follow the podcast on Instagram at Silver Screen Podcast, or look for the Silver Screen Podcast under Facebook groups. Links to all our social media accounts and more are in this episode's description. This podcast is available on YouTube or wherever you get your podcasts. Just look for Silver Screen, Hit or Miss Star Trek. This has been a Mike's Podcast production. Copyright 2022. Thank you for listening.